Alrighty, good afternoon here on Sunday, the 22nd of September. Working on the Altmill, there seems to be some people interested in what I'm doing with it, so that's why I post things on Facebook quite a bit, just for those that are following along. And I know I like to see things before I do them, so maybe that is okay. I hope I'm not bothering people by posting too much. I just want to be sure those that do want to see it are able to see it. So I may just show you my drawings, and I'm not that creative, so the things I'm doing are more or less from this video. That let me just bring it up real fast. That I told Bob, I think there's a guy named Bob Cole that has asked me to put that link up of that video. So his name, I've never knew much about him, and I still don't. I just ran across that video, and he has his drawing for sale, and I bought it for like 15 bucks. Forgot where that was for sale, probably on Etsy. EIG is his name. I'm looking for him right here. EIG. This is him. I'll give him full credit for anything I'm doing because he gave me the inspiration of what I'm trying to do. So then the video that I'm talking about is this GOAT Spoilboard, greatest of all time Spoilboard. And so that is where I got my inspiration from. And so down here is, I wasn't going to watch this right now. And of course the cat's grabbing one outside while I'm trying to video, so see how that works out. Down here under his video is the links to a lot of these parts that he used, and I did order some of the things probably. I have other things that I use that, like for the threaded inserts, I don't use those cheap ones like that normally. I have used them. In fact, CNC sells those, from CNC Labs. They look like pretty much the same ones. I don't know. These may be the same ones I use, except they're a different color. I don't know. This says currently unavailable. But the 15 millimeter is the length. In fact, here's the ones that I always buy right here if you look for those. These are quarter 20. And you can buy them in packages of 50 for $10. They're pretty cheap. You can get smaller and longer ones. I usually have some longer ones, but for 3/4 wood, you need to have the shorter 15 millimeter ones, which is about 5/8, just under 5/8 long. So if you happen to need little short ones, you can get those as well. I don't know that I've ever used those, but they would be useful for. That's a little more than 3/8. So if you had 1/2 inch wood that you didn't want to go all the way through because maybe something's under it, you could use those in a 1/2 inch piece of wood or something like that. Anyway, it comes with the tool and usually a drill, but I usually just mill those out on the table. And I'm wasting way too much time talking about this. I just wanted you to know that this is the design that I've bought and am using. I don't remember where he sold it, and his G-code that come with it, he's using he has a big machine, well, no, he had it in Onefinity, but he was using a large, like a 2 or 3 inch, see, there's 3-inch surfacing, 1/2 inch shank. We can't use 1/2 inch shank on things that we're doing, so I couldn't use any of that. I mean, I don't use other people's G-code normally anyway. But anyway, just for instance, I'm just telling you, this is kind of the T-tracks and that I bought. Let's see if it's the same ones or not. Yeah, that's the same ones I bought. They're $43 for 4 pieces of that. I've actually bought 12 because I may put some on something else. But at the time, I wasn't sure if I was going to use 8 or 9, so I think I bought 3 packages of those. So yeah, for 8 of them, like I'm using on the Altmill, it would be about 90 bucks for 8 pieces of that. And they give you the dimensions here, which has been useful for how I've been milling that out. And I'll show you that right quick. If I'm hoping to get through this quick, I keep messing around. But anyway, get that over with. I showed you this is the video, EIGN Designs, greatest of all time spoilboard. This video was made in July of 23. And somewhere in here, probably on his website, he does have a link to selling different files, and that right there is $15.99 for all of the files, which comes with a whole lot of other parts besides just that. So I bought all of that, and of course I can't share those with anyone because I don't own them. But you can see in that picture there how that wraps around your T-tracks. And he cut his out. If you'll watch the video, you'll know this. He cut those strips out, and then I think on a router table, he did that rabbit or whatever shape that is around there at the right depth and all that. And I didn't do this exactly how he did it, and let me show you how I'm doing it. And I have plenty of room for failure, but it's a good test, and it's good exercise for you if you're not real familiar with running this kind of stuff. And it's good to see how square your machine is. You need to get your machine really square, calibrated, and I went through all of those yesterday. I actually, if you want to see, the easiest way to find how square your Altmill is as far as the cuts, there's a calibration tool in the G-Sender, but honestly, it was telling me to move it the wrong direction. So if you use that, just think about what you're doing and the measurements you're getting, because in that it kind of dumbs down everything, and it just says, okay, move the Y left this direction or that direction. And either I misunderstood what it meant, or it was just absolutely telling me the wrong direction. As far as I know, it was just telling me the wrong direction. So it took me a couple hours probably to do something that I could have done in probably 30 minutes. So let me show you a good way to do this, though. Let's just make, this is the size of, that's another thing. The width is 51 7/8 is what size of piece of plywood or MDF that will fit down in that table. Those cross runners are about 14 inches apart, and the back two are about 11, I think, because it's turned different from the rest. So, and I think I'm talking about the slot that's in the top of them is about where that measures. So anyway, let's just bring this up and I'll show you quickly that just draw something big that you can measure easily. And I have some long steel machinist type rulers that I like to read between 1/10 of an inch, 100 thousandths. I can see probably within 20 or 30 thousandths looking at that. So that's a little bit more accurate than using a measuring tape. Some people like to drill holes and put pins in it. You're going to do that a lot of times, so I wouldn't drill a lot of holes personally. I used a 60-degree V-carve bit and just drilled about 10 or 15 thousandths into it, and then took a pencil and colored it in so I could see it real clear, and then measured that. So, but anyway, I think I was using, say, a 32-inch. I used the same in X and Y, 32-inch. And so let's just draw a quick rectangle. I know there's plenty of ways to do this, but this is quick and easy way to draw a triangle. And so now all you need to do is, if you want to put this on center, I guess that is center. Okay. I personally don't like it there. I know I'm wasting a lot of time. Anyway, let's not worry about that. So you could actually pull your dimension tool up right here and just, oh, that's not the dimension tool. I grabbed the wrong one. Here we go. Let's just dimension this out so we have it. Let's make this big enough to see. Just put about 2-inch letters in here so we can see this. And there's that dimension, and the other one will be the same. Whoops, I'm not sure if I snapped to that just right. Let's try that again. Okay, and we know this is going to be 32 inches, that's what I drew it to be. So anyway, just for the fun of it. So you can do things like that. Let me paint this so you can see this better. So when you just set your 0 right there, and let's just put a dot there just for the fun of it. And so what you can do there is, it's just very easy to do your own method and stay out of the G-Sender tools if you can. A lot of them are really dumbed down for people that just don't understand how to do things, and they need to learn how to do them, honestly. And it's not helping you if you keep using really dumbed down tools, you know, like surfacing, for instance. The surfacing tool in there will work. It doesn't work as well. There's something going on where I can't seem to select that. I don't care. I'm just showing you that you're going to have points that you drill right in those areas. So you're going to move the machine 30. You're going to come down and just drill you a little small hole with the V-carve or whatever you want to do to depth, you know, just barely move it down, and you can run that machine around with the spindle on, and you don't have to mess around like you would if you didn't. If you use the G-Center, you really can't run that machine because it takes you out of your main screen to do that. So I just came around and I moved it 32 inches, drilled me a little tiny, just marked the wood a little bit with it, and then I took my steel rule and I measured these numbers. And honestly, the only number that really matters, as long as you measure this one and that one and you're getting really close to 32 inches, you may not get exactly, but because you're eyeballing and measuring, you're not going to necessarily be exactly getting this. But this cat's really driving me nuts. He never does this, but here I am on a video and he wants to whine all the time. Okay, this number is what's going to change on you. So that 45.255 number, so that's 45 1/4, really close to that. So you're going to be putting millimeter numbers in the machine if you use that. Otherwise, you can use this and go with this method and see how accurate it is. And then all you're going to do is on the back of, on the Y gantry, just so I can quickly, hopefully you understand what I'm getting at, is this just kind of roughly draw it out over here and just stick it somewhere up here. What did I just draw? I did something. Oh, I had that selected. Okay. Let's undo that for a minute. Let's go back up here. I'm just going to make it 48 inches by something like 3 inches. It doesn't matter. I'm just trying to show you an example. So this display like this is your gantry, and you have your homing sensors back here that it homes to. So that's what corrects this, if you don't know this, is so that if you happen to be a little bit crooked like this and you go and drill these, that's going to make this line, this point and this point, and maybe even this point and this point, be leaning this way. Now, mainly it's going to be this line right here, because that's what you can adjust, is the Y. You're not really ever adjusting X for anything. So Y is square, then X is fine. So if you're crooked, this line down here at the bottom is going to be matching how crooked that is. So that's all you need to know about on that. Is I usually don't like moving these manually because you can get them crooked and it's kind of hard to get them back. I'm sure I'm just too dumb to do it, but I don't almost never move things manually like that. I should not have done that. I just thought it'd be quicker. Anyway, that's just an example to show you how to calibrate your machine. Make sure this number is as close as you can get. And then if you want to go into that tool and calibrate with their tool and say, okay, what difference am I, you know, I think if it's going to say if you're within, say, 5/1000ths of an inch, this number is within this that you measure, you are way beyond what they consider intolerance. You know, I don't know what numbers they use, but if this number is within, say, 5 thousandths, I think you are way within tolerance. And so you can keep adjusting. So you're going to adjust your homing switch. And what I found mine was doing, just to give you a hint, is there's some stops back here. Make sure that you're not hitting them stops when it's trying to home, because that is one thing that I was having trouble with, is I kept fighting and it wasn't getting better. And I finally got to looking, and when it homed, it literally was bumping that stop just a little bit. So I don't think it was really homing it all the way. I think it was stopped and maybe even compressing a little bit on that stop. And so once I moved both of them out another, like a 1/16 of an inch or thereabouts, and then I started doing my measurements again, then I came pretty quick, got it into where it should be. So if this number is large right here, which is what the case was on mine, if this number is showing more than what this shows it should be, that means this, in other words, your Y is tilted down on the left. So you need to move that homing switch back a little bit if this number is big. Now, G-Center was telling me to move it to this direction, move it forward, but it was wrong. And so you got to think about that. If this number is long, then obviously this line is leaning this way, down. So to make it not lean down, you need to move your gantry back on the left, or, you know, the other way, this direction. Either way, you need to tilt that to make this number smaller. You're going to go clockwise with this rotation of your Y. So you'll adjust whichever homing sensor you need to get that to work out. I know I wasted a lot of time here on that. That's just something that's important. I wanted you to know if you didn't know that. And so I'm going to close this screen and get out of that. And let's go into this drawing. I know this probably video is way longer than it should be. I'm sorry, I cannot. This is why I don't make videos. I can't do it quickly. This is just my plywood. The first thing I did is fit the plywood to the table. And so the table's 51 7/8 wide. So you cannot, in fact, let me turn, I've already put the dimensions in here. I just want to show you. So here's the dimensions. I've got dimensions for other stuff in here. 51 7/8 is what will fit in that. And I put some little 30,000 shims, like some strapping material that I saved from pallets or what have you. I put 4 shims in there so that it really wasn't tight in here in case any kind of expansion or something happens. So I had to basically I ripped a piece of plywood right down the center, and then the gap it left was about 3 3/8 wide. Right in here you can see, and I also made sure that wasn't really tight in there and touching. And then I just screwed all the plywood down, and I can't, that's pretty time consuming. I'm not gonna, you know how to cut plywood and put that on your table. So I left it at the front edge. I left it back to where that slot on your front is showing, in case I want to use that to screw something down to. The center of your axis on the Altmill, at least on mine, actually ends at about the very front edge of that aluminum. It really will on the Y, and it won't go back very far. Here on your home position to there is about 49 inches, just about to the front edge of that aluminum at the front. So you're going to have to hang your MDF really close to that front edge. I figure I'll leave it about 1/8 of an inch back from that edge when I'm done. But I didn't do that to the plywood. I left it maybe an inch behind that. And I'll just want to be sure when I'm done with the MDF spoilboard, I can go all the way around this with an end mill and not hit any of my limits. And so you want to be centered in your travel area. Find the center of your travel, which is going to be from home position right here. It's going to be about 24 1/4, because I was getting travel of about 49 in the X. I said that wrong, 49 1/2, that direction. So the center to here would be 24 1/2 inches. And I would set your center, I would zero your G54 when it homes back here. Go ahead and zero your X and Y. Then clock it over here to X 24.5. At least that's what mine is. And then minus 24.5 this way. I think I told you wrong because you got 49.5 this way. So it's 20X 24 3/4 to this center point there, and Y minus 24.5. And that gives you where you're in the center. That way when you go to mill these slots that I'll show you right quick here, that is the next step that I surfaced the plywood because I needed to put these slots down in here. Okay, now I'll show you if we have time here. I'll try to quickly get through this. I wanted to mill these slots in the table just a little bit, maybe, I think I ran it about 0.09, 90 thousandths deep. I hate to go any deeper than I have to because I don't want to eat up the strength in this board, and maybe it doesn't hurt it. I just want it to locate into those and be cut in. And because it wasn't very flat, the plywood, even though I screwed it down as flat as I could, had the table level, all of those things. I was about 25 high here, 25 low here, and I had about 50 thousandths difference from the lowest point to the highest point, you know, whatever. So I surfaced all that, but I only took about 50 thousandths off, I believe. And then I milled these slots 90 thousandths deep. Now you need to be sure you're in the center of your travel when you do that, because you've got to get your end mill to clear each end of these slots. And I wanted the slots as long as I could get them, because it's coming out here over dead space, because remember my plywood wasn't all the way at the end of the travel. So I had to be sure that I set my X, Y, whatever, so that I didn't hit the end of my travel. But when I'm all done, I'm going to be hanging those out a little bit. And let me show you some pictures right quick of how I've got this. Let me open this so you can see these. That's just kind of a general picture I showed the other day of what I'm doing. This is the serial number on my, not serial, the model number of that dust collection vacuum that I use out there. I got from Home Depot. It's more of a commercial type. It's not a cheap one, but it's I think it's called the RV 24,000. You can look them up on Home Depot. I just wanted, in case someone asked that question. Well, where's the rest of my pictures? And this is kind of where I'm at here. These are hanging out. I don't know if you can see, but see, these are down in the wood. So I cut 3/4 slots in that wood, 90 thousandths deep, just so they sit in. And I haven't yet drilled these. I was going to just kind of spot drill these spots where the screws go, so I make sure I'm in the center of those countersinks. Those are weird. On I think Amazon it says those are like 4-inch and 2-inch spacing, but it's not. It says it's 2 inches from this end and then. I measured them roughly with calipers to be about 3.985, and so it's possible they really didn't come out to be 100 millimeters either. So I don't know. I'm going to have to go out there and probably take a pencil and mark these and set something like a little spot and drill or something, or a 1/8 drill or something, and see if I end up right on top of the center of all of the spots that I drill. That I mark. And if I am, I'll go ahead and run the program and of course get these out of the way and just spot drill these where the screws are going to go. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. I wanted you to see this computer too. People talk about using laptops. I do not believe you'll ever have good success using laptops. All I see is people complaining they lose connection and everything. I would never lose any connection on either one of my machines, and I use these little Dell Optiplex computers. You buy them on Amazon. They're refurbished, but they look brand new. I think it's $165, I think, for the computer, and then I use these 32-inch monitors that are something like $150. So that's what I like to use, and I use a keyboard, a wireless keyboard and mouse, and I move these around. Now when I get my shelves built under here, this stuff will live somewhere under the table in a more of a cabinet style situation, but for now we're still building the Altmill, and that's just how it is. So just wanted to show you that. And so now at the end, I was telling you, I'll end up having to hang these out because my travel is going to be out here, but I don't have to be all the way to the end of the travel, but I want to be hanging out a little because I'm going to bring that MDF out. Like I said, so that I still have room for, say, a 3/8 end mill to pass here and be in my travel. And so I'm going to make the board 48 inches, and that gives me a little room on both ends here to be able to do that. So I'll just have to take an end mill out here and line these up, just bump against it or something, and then mark the holes or whatever, and I'll know that I'm lined up perfectly in line. Not that it probably matters that much, but I'm very much OCD type person. I want them to be perfectly aligned. And let's see if there's any more pictures I wanted to show you of anything. Don't think so. This is just what it looks like at the very back. You know, you're just going to pocket out, and you're going to have a good amount of plywood here at the back that you can't surface. And it took me a while to decide to do that because I didn't want this to not be flat, but honestly I finally realized it really doesn't matter because MDF is going to be laying in this area, not out here. So I surfaced this as far as I could possibly reach in the travel that I had, and that is right at the home position. And that's just how that turned out. Okay, so I don't want to bother you with a bunch of junk, but anyway, that's where I am with this. So I know this is probably a long video, so I'll show you through the rest of this. So the first step was we got the plywood on there. That's the plywood. Remember, three pieces of plywood. Actually, I messed up and cut it wrong, and I have 2 strips in here, but if you do it right, you'll end up with 1 strip that's 58. Now these are not centered in here like this. When I set my 0, I'm not doing any CNC work for the plywood, so it has nothing, and it's just easier to draw everything in the center. So yes, I know these slots are actually sitting beyond this down here, but the plywood is not part of a CNC operation, at least not right now. When I drill some holes later it may be, but not to this point. So and if you'd like these files that I've drawn here, I can certainly share them with you. This spacing I didn't go into. Well, that's why these dimensions are drawn here, because I wanted you to know here's the spacings, that this just the way this worked out to put 8 of them, and this is at 49.5 inches, which is just about at your travel extreme right there. Now it's pretty close to the left limit because that's where your home is. I think I could bump, I would probably recommend bumping this line maybe 30 thousandths to the right, because you have a little more travel over here. At the same time, I wanted to be centered in this area, and I ended up with about 1.1 inches on each side of this between the machine, and that is where that is, and that's all you've got is about an inch, just a shade over an inch on each side, and that's just how that works. But here's your dimensions, Bob, if you're watching. The distance between these ended up to be 6.209, you might say. You know, you need to use these 4 digits for accuracy when you're doing a bunch of spacings, but 6.208 with a 6 inches. Assume you're using inches. The number from center to center, you can figure that out, but I thought I had it on here, but I guess I didn't. We can put it on here right quick, but it's going to be, actually I have it written down over here, I forget. 6.963 with a 6 is center to center on all 8 spacings. Now your spoil board's not going to be out, it actually is going to end right inside that. I probably didn't put that dimension. I have too many dimensions here and it looks pretty crappy already, but just for the heck of it, well, golly, I had the wrong one. This video is too long. I'm sorry about that. I know you're not going to watch all this. Let's put this somewhere where we can see it. This is not very professional looking. I'm just showing you that's 48 inches between them. And I probably didn't measure it perfect is why it's not exactly, but it should be exactly 48 inches between these. So I'm going to hang my spoilboard out to where it covers, and I'll show you this in a minute. It's going to cover just like these hooked over the ends in that picture that I showed you of the fella that made the video. I wanted these outside ones to hang over, just not over into the slot, but just over that part right there a little bit, just so it's holding it down a little. So when you got something tight clamped down to the top, it's kind of helping if you tighten against those. Everything's kind of sandwiching together and not trying to rip stuff out of the wood, you know, because I wouldn't be tightening very tight on clamps. I'm not a fan of clamping anyway. Taping something down or counterboring and putting bolts through these inserted holes is much better. Clamping is usually, in my case, only used for drilling and getting your holes in it or whatever you got to do like that, and not machining. You normally will scoot it around if you're only clamped down. So, all right, let's turn the dimensions off. They're messing me up. So we got the plywood down. We've slotted that about 90 thousandths deep. And then we're going to show where this MDF is going to end up laying in here. So like I was just telling you, it's just going to come over to the edge. That's going to be slotted through here when I'm done. So this is a lot more complicated of a way than what you would want to do yours, I'm sure. I want to show you how I'm fitting this. So I drew two examples here of how this is going to work. So these, like I just got through telling you here, this represents your T-track, and this is that 90 thousandths that I put into the plywood that they're just going to locate down into here, right? So, you know, you're going to just bring them up and set them down in there, something like that, and screw them down, and all that complicated stuff. After that, we're going to start working on the MDF, and this will be the final project. I want to back this away from here so it's just easier to see. This part is how the MDF will eventually look, but what I was planning on doing first, because I don't have a really good way, I don't have a good setup with my table saw that I trust, that I can accurately 100% guarantee not to scrap one, is normally you would just cut these in strips and lay them in there and then cut out that part so that they clear around here by just a little bit. Not much, just a little breathing room there. So you're not binding up and shoving up against this and all that. You want it to just have a little breathing room, maybe 10 thousandths of room under there or so. So that's why the plywood needs to be really flat when you go to mill out these depths and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm not doing it that way. What I'm going to do, this is just how it's going to look when I'm done. I know I just broke this up in pieces, but basically that's what I was telling you on the outside. Not, this is really continuing on. So don't look at that as a little piece. The outside will look like this on the last one, you know, where I told you it's just going to hook over that. Probably just a little room that way. It's not covering this. This slot's 3/8 wide and you're putting 1/4 inch bolts in it. So you have plenty of room in this area. If you wanted to even come right up to this edge, you could do that. And I wanted this to be seated down in the under the MDF as far as possible. So this is strong. It's sticking out about 3/16 of an inch right there is what that amounts to. So it's not a whole lot sticking out. All right. That's how that's working. Now, here's how complicated I'm doing this. I may have to break this in two parts. I hope I'm not bothering you by making a long video. It's just how this works out for me. Okay, so that's how the MDF lines up. Now what I'm going to do here is, see, this is on 0, still using that 0 of my travel, and I realize that this is not showing right because my T-tracks and the plywood, actually the plywood is sitting up high is the difference here. if we wanted to make this look right, and I hate to mess with stuff here, but honestly, the plywood is sitting more like that. Just for an example, I'm not going to save this so I didn't mess nothing. So I'm going to turn off the plywood anyway for right now so we can think about what we're doing. Because it doesn't really apply to this. And so I don't want you thinking about that right now. All right. So that's how your slots are already in the table. And that's how the MDF lines up. And this is 0 right here. Okay. That doesn't matter that much. What matters is now we're going to slot out that MDF to the depth that's left over. So we took away 90 thousandths here and set those in there. I've already went around and measured how much them stick up all over the plywood, and they're roughly 300 thousandths sticking up. Okay, they're 370 thousandths thick. I measured them from the factory. They're about, that's just a little clearance for 3/8 is what it is. So we got 0.37, and now we've roughly milled 90 thousandths deep. So we're going to have 300 thousandths. I'm just telling you what I measured. So I want to leave about 15 or 20 thousandths clearance just to make sure that this operation I do when I flip it over is not going to give me trouble. And it may. You're going to have a perfectly square machine for that to work out. But so that's what that amount's going to be, that we're now going to mill this, let's just say 320 thousandths deep. I think I'm going to do something like that because I don't trust that everything is perfectly flat, level. The wood's not going to maybe swell a little or something like that. I'd rather that have, say, 10 thousandths or 15 thousandths clearance around that than to ever be tight. And that's what's going to make it. We'll have a better chance of that working out, I think. So now we're going to have, this thing here. Where did we leave off with this? Everybody's walking in here and really getting me confused. We've got MDF. Okay. Okay, that's what I was telling you. So we're going to mill the slots in the MDF, what did I say, 320 deep. So that same program that I had in here is basically the same thing. That I'll have to use the same one. That way they're located exactly in the same place. Same zero, same everything. So the way this one worked was just like I told you, is it just milled them here. And I know that that's funny looking because the plywood is like this, but it really did come out the end of the front end of the plywood. So, if you want to hang your plywood out and do it like that, that's still fine, because the slot is going to be sticking up to where you can get in the ends of it anyway, as long as you don't go too deep with these. You'd have to go over 1/8 of an inch deep before that would be a problem of not being really good. And even then, those little bolts and studs that come with them, they're very thin, and you're not going to have an issue. So it'd probably be best, honestly, if you put a bigger piece of plywood and just flush it up to the front of your machine if that's what you want, and you'll have plenty of travel. Just make sure your MDF is sitting in there to where you have room to profile all the way around that one. I like to have good square corners and true edges on my MDF spoilboard that I can get all the way around. That way I can always measure up to it. I can get my, my tool setter on here, and I can find my zeros. I can do all of that stuff as long as I can get, now I have to be careful about that. I have to think about that, but you don't want that tool setter out here so far either that it can't work. So we'll see if that's a problem. If it is, we may have to have a different workaround, but we've got so many holes on this table, we can do something about that. But I do like to have a good square corner to work off of. So that's just kind of how that part worked. So now let's go back and try to get through what we were talking about here. now we've got the slots cut in the plywood, and I need to mill those in the MDF next. But that's all it amounts to is we're going to just mill these down in the MDF 320 thousandths deep roughly. And then here's the scary part, that this is why everything has to be perfect. Now at this point you should have had, I haven't done this yet, I have to figure it out. I've got to have some holes, and let's get to where the holes go. And here's the hole patterns that probably will eventually be here. So this, see where he's got the, I'm just using his hole pattern for now, and I don't know if I'm going to use them. I just got it in here. And I took out the boxes. He had the square around it where he cut them out. I took all that off, and all I did was centered these hole patterns into what I have, this distance I have in here. So he's got these bolted down in 3 places, so I think I can do that. If I ever think it needs more screws, I can come back and add 2 more, the same type of location, halfway between here, everywhere I think it needs it. I don't think it really needs it. I just worry a little bit about that. But anyway, before we mill these slots, I do need to have some of these holes milled into both the plywood. Probably some inserts in the plywood I can screw that into. And so that when I flip this, now remember we're centered right here in the very zero, and that's going to end up a 3/4 hole, which I may leave out. I don't know that I want a 3/4 hole in the center of this. I don't think I do, because I like to use my center hole for locating something like a 1/4 inch end mill or something. I can find my center of travel anytime I want to, So something you can fit in your spindle needs to be that hole size. Probably would just, now I've got these grouped, I'd have to ungroup that to do that. But anyway, that's what I would do, is probably not do that. But I'll go ahead and probably put screws in the center of this, and then probably 1 screw in all 4 corners at the very minimum for milling this out. And you're going to have them all eventually, so you probably ought to just go ahead, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 times 3 is what, 28, 30, 42 screws it's going to take. I even thought about if this doesn't interfere with where the table is built, the cross members of the table, is I might even go through and and I have a bunch of lock nuts and screws, 1/4 inch screw that would take about a 2 inch screw or something like that, to counterbore this eventually and put them down with nuts on the back side so that you're really secure. But really, I don't think it's necessary. It's probably easier to go in and counterbore all this in your plywood just to make sure it's below depth, and go ahead and just get all of those in that plywood. And see, I'm learning this as I go. I haven't done that yet. So just talking about this kind of lets me know what the next step really is of my progress, because all I've got at this point is slots in the plywood. And I haven't even put like I said, I haven't drilled them yet, which maybe ain't that important right now anyway. But I think I will go ahead and, that's probably the next step, get all of these holes, not all the rest necessarily, just what's holding that MDF down. And then probably have you a hole in the center. I've kind of messed up my center hole when I was still calibrating the table. I've got a 1/4 inch hole that's not center, so I'm probably going to have to go with some bigger size hole in the plywood here. I don't know what size, but I'll look into that. So I'm probably not going to put, these 2 are what's going to hold me, so that I probably better go ahead and get all of those in the plywood first. Anyway, I'm really going on and on with this video. I'm so sorry. I cannot make short videos. I can't do it. I've tried. So if you don't want to watch all this, just scan through this quickly, and if there's anything useful, I'm hoping to show things up here close so you can always go to it and zoom in, pause the video, and look at some of this that I've rambled on about. So let's look at some more layers here that I've put in here. After that, like I said, we're going to mill that out and make sure you've got, if your hole pattern's in the plywood and this, you should literally be able to flip that upside down and it should fit. Should. Okay, should fit. Now remember, we didn't counterbore this side. We don't need to yet, but if you could put a bolt and a washer, make sure it don't line up with one of these slots where it's going to be, and it shouldn't, because remember, they're over in these areas. So just so that you drill your 1/4 inch holes, mill them out with an end mill, whatever you do, should be a close enough fit. If you're worried about it, undersize them with an end mill, and say instead of 250, make them 248 or 245. And if you need to open them up with a drill, go get you a drill that's a little bit undersized until you get that. It's just pretty critical that when you flip that thing over, and I don't know if you're going to flip it from X to in the Y direction or the X direction. I guess whichever way it fits the best is what I would say. And I don't know how you're going to know that. It should fit. If I don't have any real high spots, and I really don't, I've already checked, I'm pretty close, but I think you would have better luck if you flip this in the Y direction than trying to change sides with these, because if something's square this way, it should be square, but you could have more issues. You know, this is to be determined. I don't know. It may be a complete failure when I get to that point. But this is time consuming. So you're not going to go out here and get this done in one weekend. This is going to go on for a few weekends here, maybe a month, and then start building the cabinet around it, you know. So anyway, that's where we're at. I think you understand now where we're going with all this. Let me turn that back on just so you can look at this. If you want to zoom in and think about this, these are going in the plywood. This is the MDF that will be flipped to look like this. It will look more like this with deeper slots on the first operation. And then when you flip it over is when you'll do that and get all your hole patterns, counterbores, what have you, done just right. But you can go ahead and have your through holes in it. And theoretically, they will line up if your table is perfectly square. If you've done everything right, and this is a good time to know for sure that it is. In fact, before you even run any kind of hole flipping patterns, you really should mill, and I think I've done this. My numbers are perfectly, I've got the same width front and back, just using the measuring tape, stuff like that. I believe I am well within square enough, and you should allow a little bit of clearance around any of this anyway, because this is just not a perfect world. Everything don't fit when you make it as well as it does in a drawing. We know that. So, leave you 10, 15,000, 20, 30,000 clearance around any of this stuff, both the height and the sides of this, because it's just not that important for that to be that tight in here. You just don't want it to move around that much. 20 thousandths would be perfect amount of clearance. If you flex something 20 thousandths, it's going to stop at that point, and you're not going to break something or anything. So I think that's fine. And if it ever was a problem, you could always pull these out and put a little shim under this if it was too loose. But we don't want to have to do that. It's a lot of work and everything. So anyway, that's where we're at with this. And if there's anything that I can help, I'm not here during the week. I'm a machinist. If any of you that don't follow me, I'm a CNC machinist at an airplane manufacturer, about 35 miles away from here. I'm gone 60 hours a week, and Saturdays and Sundays is the only time you'll catch me here, or even really, I don't have access to my phone or anything else usually during the day at work. It's a pretty tight deal. We're kind of under government rules and regulations a lot of times because of the aircraft type situations, and so we're not at any liberty to just do much of anything, you know. We feel like we're in kindergarten class. But, you know, I work hard all week over there, so I cannot be available. I'm tired when I get home. I don't do this stuff during the week. But send me a message and reach out, and I'll be happy to help you if I can help you. And if you don't like none of this, don't do none of this. But I can share some of the. I can't really share you. I really don't think I can share those the whole stuff with you, because that is his drawing. Other than that, none of this stuff that I have is his drawings. I didn't use none of his stuff except those hole patterns I actually got from him. I probably will go in and change sizes of some of it because I don't know that I like them. But I don't know that I'm supposed to be sharing any of that. So if you could, don't ask me to share you that, because I don't believe that's legal. Or at least according to my agreement with buying from him. Just go buy it, help the guy out. It's $16 and you own it, and so you don't have to worry about it. And it helps another guy, you know, that's just like you, trying to make a few dollars paying for his hobby or whatever that is that he does. I don't know, but all right. Thanks for watching. I'm getting out of here. Have a good afternoon.